are looking today at the topic of moving from hindsight to insight to foresight and how Alma can support you to do that. I think it's always worth starting with some definitions to make sure that we're all clear about what we mean. So as I said, the title of the session is Hindsight to Insight to Foresight. And in the case of Alma's reporting capability, what we're talking about is the ability to generate actionable information. With Alma, we are able to assess cross-institutional usage information, impact factors for journals, budget usage trends, and up-to-date expenses, circulation, bibliographic data, and more. So, hindsight, I would define as, I wish we'd known that, I wish we had spotted that trend. Whereas insight moves us to a place where we can say, now I see what's happening. But I suppose the best place to be, the place we're aiming to be in many cases, is in a position of foresight, where we can say, we can react to this information. It helps us plan. That planning might be for staff resources, for making decision about spending on resources or renewals, or perhaps where to target our information literacy sessions. Actually, I found quite a nice graphic that I think illustrates or gives us some additional definitions. In fact, I could have just used this image and saved a bit of time. But I think it's very succinct. Hindsight is to do with measuring the past. Insight is about monitoring the present. And then foresight, that's all about exploring the future. So where does Alma come into this? Alma Analytics is so named quite deliberately. It's to indicate that what Alma can do is so much more than the traditional concept of reports, as found in the older generation of library systems that tend to focus entirely on the hindsight, that really all they're able to do is that measuring of the past. But that's okay. Hindsight is good. We do need to measure stuff that happened. Usage figures, whether circulation statistics or e-resource measurement, as well as helping us plan for the future, prove that we did stuff right, that we were busy, that we had the right books on the shelves, for example. So, I think we agree we do need hindsight, as long as you can also move onwards to being able to gain insight and foresight. And that is what we try to imply by the name analytics. It is so much more. Alma uses Oracle Business Intelligence, a world-leading business intelligence platform, to deliver this functionality. But please do note, the analytics function is fully integrated into Alma, and I'll be able to demonstrate that to you in a little while. Another question. Why should we care? Well, back in 2012, Educause produced these figures on the importance of analytics across the whole of the institution, the higher education institution. And their findings, their interviews, found that 84% of those people spoken to across the institution felt that compared to 2 years previously, analytics was more important. And indeed, 2 years hence, it would become even more important to the success of higher education. This is another slide from the same EDUCAUSE study, looking at departments within the institution and their use of analytics for the success of the institution. And the library, in this example, is ranked number 10 from a list of 17 entities on campus when it comes to the usage of analytics. This places the library way below enrollment management, finance, student learning, and so on. We're 3 years on from this study. I wonder if, in general, the position of the library has changed. And I would venture to suggest that libraries that use Alma will most certainly have moved up the ranking. And this is why we've made analytics an integral part of Alma. Exactly like acquisitions and fulfillment are standard workflows, so is analytics. This importance of analytics contributing to the overall success of the institution. And we're going to take a look now at all the ways in which Alma delivers the hindsight, insight, and foresight. This is a nice summary slide that really looks at definitions from an Alma point of view. Let's look at this before I actually go into the live system. So we start with the simpler stuff, as discussed before, for your hindsight. Batch reports, counts, ad hoc reporting if needs be, but essentially measuring or simply supporting everyday tasks, the describing, the measuring the past. Just as an aside, on-demand ad hoc reporting is possible because Alma Analytics is very straightforward to use. And again, I'll demonstrate that shortly when we look at the live system. But then to support insight, what we need to do is make sure the information, the analysis, is reaching the right people at the right time. And we do this via dashboards and by pushing the data out of the system to the people that need it. And then we move to planning, where the data, the evidence provided by Alma, allows you to make decisions and forecast what will happen or what is needed in the future. Okay, this slide is actually just to remind me that at this point we'll move into the actual live demonstration version of Alma and have a look at some of these concepts. So get rid of the slides and we'll go into Alma. Okay. And what we'll do is we will actually go straight over to the Alma menu. So we're looking first at how Alma supports this need for hindsight, for the measuring we need to do. To access the analytics area of the system, I'm going to come to this part of the menu so you can see fully integrated. In fact, though, let's leave analytics to one side for the moment because some stuff can actually be done without even going into the analytics area. And in this case, I'm actually going to search the catalog or the repository, as we call it in Alma terminology. And this is, if you like, a bit of a demonstration of the ad hoc reporting we can do for the counting, for the measuring side of things. So in the repository, I'm actually going to do an advanced search. I'm going to specify that I want to search just physical titles. And then what I'm going to say is that I want to add some conditions. And now I'm given the opportunity to pick any of the fields that you would find within a record of a physical item at title level, holding level, and right down to item level. Now, my scenario for this report, if you like, this sort of count, is that I need or have been asked to provide some data on items that have been registered as lost by patrons. So the status would be lost. We actually call that process type in Alma. So I'm going to add that condition. I've got the option to say equals or is empty. In this case, what I want is equals. And when I drop down this list here, you'll see these different process type statuses that I could be choosing. And I want lost. And then I'm just going to click on go. And there you go. This list of 17 items, this list of results, is essentially an ad hoc report which gives me that count, that information that I need, the items that have been registered as lost. And what else I can do with this is if I just draw your attention to this little button here that says Tools. Now, wherever you have a results list in Alma, you will see this Tools button. And what it does, it allows you to export the results to an Excel spreadsheet so that you can then manipulate the data in whatever way you choose. So I've got my export. Let's just open that. It'll just open Excel on my machine here, and I'll just show you what it looks like when it opens the Excel. There we go. And there you can see that's our list exported from Alma. So very useful functionality. But that's that's hindsight reporting, really, isn't it? A count of something that's happened within the library. Okay, but let's actually have a look at analytics. That's really what I wanted to make sure that you were able to see today. So again, go back to the Alma menu and over to this analytics area under the administration heading in my menu. Now, it's worth noting that access to analytics can be given or indeed restricted based on your role within Alma. You may have noticed that I logged in with my own personal login so that Alma knows who I am and what I can do. And that's one of the real fundamentals of Alma. It is a role-based system, so each member of library staff would have their own personal login and therefore their own sets of permissions and so on. So I'm going to choose the option Design Analytics. And to show you an example, I'm actually going to open a pre-existing report, a pre-configured report. And it's this one here on loan statistics. Okay. I'll just open that up. It's just pulling together the results for me, because obviously each time I open this report, it is actually rechecking the database. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the criteria of the report to start with. And this will actually show you how the report has been built. Ever so easy to create the reports at this sort of level. Essentially, you are dragging and dropping the columns that you wish to report on. And then if I go back to the Results tab, that's where we came in, we can have a look at the results, but look at the format. It's not just a table of figures, it's visual. Now, it could be a table, if that's what you need, or it could be different graph styles. Alma gives you the choice. But I really do believe that the format and this option to have it displayed graphically is important, because actually a graph like this could very well have more of an impact than just a table of figures. And then finally, while we're still talking about hindsight, there's one other area I want to show you within the system. And on this occasion, I'm going to go to the catalogue option. So, we're looking at a range of folders here. Let's just pop that back to reports. Up at the top here, where it says My Folders, this is where I would save reports that I was working on before I even had the opportunity to, or was ready to, shall we say, share my reports with any of my colleagues at my university. Then under this heading of Shared Folders, we have a folder called Alma, That's some pre-existing reports. We have Alma University. Well, that would be the name of your own university, your own library. And I would save my reports into my local shared repository for reports when I was ready to actually share those reports with colleagues, and we're going to come on to that in a minute. But here's the much more exciting bit of Alma. The ability to share reports with the community, and by community we basically mean other customers of Alma around the world. Now, I know a lot of you, certainly in the UK, will have to do annual returns to national bodies. In the UK, it's the Sconnell report. It's counting, it's hindsight, but it is critical and it's time-consuming. So here's really one of the best bits about Alma Analytics. Because you can share reports with other Alma users, these Sconnell reports in this case have been written by, well, you can see here on the main part of the screen, Lancaster University, Sheffield University, and York have all shared the criteria, the reports that they have written, ready to deal with their Sconnell returns. So that is such a time-saving activity. But, you know, it's still hindsight, isn't it? It's still counting stuff that that used to be done, that had been done in the library. Okay. I'd like us now to consider insight. And so in this area, what we are focusing on is how we get the information to others, to colleagues, so they gain the insight. So it's really about how we share reports, although for this particular area, I'm talking about just the sharing of reports with colleagues employed by my own institution. So I've been working on a report. It's based on recalled titles. As I was writing it, making sure it was doing what I wanted it to do, I would save the report in the My Folders area. Nobody else can see that. It would have been in my personal folder. When I was ready to let this report be shared by other colleagues at my institution, I saved it into the folders linked to the name of my university. So I'm the owner of the report. Now, if somebody has got permission to create reports, then they can come into exactly this area we're in now, in the analytics area. But the chances are that the ability to create reports and therefore have access to this particular bit of Alma will be restricted. It's the way it tends to be with reports. So I need to have a mechanism, a way of getting the report, or at the very least the results of the report, pushed out into the hands of the people that need that insight. And I'll show you how we do this within Alma. So I'm going back so I can access the Alma menu. And still under the heading of Analytics, I'm going to choose Configuration menu. And the rather snappily named Analytics Object List. Now, Analytics Objects. This is where owners of reports, people who have actually created the reports, this is where you make them available to your other colleagues. And I'll talk you through the process. So I'm going to add a new analytics report, a new analytics object, as the terminology goes. So we're just going to open up this screen. Now, I can give my report a title. I can give it a different title to perhaps what I called it when I was creating it, something that's perhaps a little more self-explanatory to the colleagues you want to share it with, although I think recall titles is probably quite self-explanatory enough. Next thing I'm going to do is find that folder that I saved it in. Let me just, actually I'm going to just scroll over a little bit there so I can go down. A huge number of reports here simply because this is a demo system, so we're always setting up different examples for people. And let's just see. Oh, I know where I put mine. Yes, it should come up. There we are. That's my ER demo report. Okay. So I've now said where the report is, and then what Alma would do is it would give me in this drop-down list a list of all the reports that were in that particular folder. I've only got one report in that folder. I can then choose what type of report. We'll come back to these different types of reports a bit later on, but for now I'm going to make this a scheduled report, and because I have said it's a scheduled report, Alma gives me a couple of other fields to choose from, as well as having a description field where I can actually write more information about this report, perhaps some more explanatory information that would help one of my colleagues decide if this was a report they wanted to subscribe to. I can also specify the frequency. I think monthly is probably frequent enough for this particular report, and the format in which this report is going to be sent out, the results, and it's going to be sent out in PDF format. Now, back to this idea of roles. This is a report that's really aimed at people within the circulation, or as we call it, the fulfillment area of Alma, because it's specifically about titles that have been recalled. So what I'm going to do, under the heading of fulfillment, I'm just selecting all of these. So anybody that has a role, an Alma role within the fulfillment side of things, will be able to find my report in a list and subscribe to it if they so wish. So I'm going to add that role, and that's all I need to do. So I'm going to save. Okay, so that report is now available for my colleagues to subscribe to if they wish. And just to demonstrate that, I'm actually going to log out of Alma as myself, and I'm going to log in now as one of my colleagues in my imaginary library, my colleague Ewan, who works within user services. Now, what you will notice as we're logging in is that Ewan's screen will start to look slightly different to mine, and when we go up to the menu, you'll see that his menu is not as comprehensive as mine was. And that is because of these roles that I've talked about. So Ewan works in user services, so he has a range of options to choose from within the fulfillment, the circulation area. He actually can create reports, but you'll notice under resource management, the only options he has is the ability to search the catalogue. He does no cataloguing. He can search the catalogue, but he doesn't actually create records or amend them, and there's nothing for acquisitions. Okay, now, you'll notice under this analytics heading that he has the option to subscribe to analytics. So if we click on this option, you will see that in the list, and it's a much shorter list than the one I saw, in the list, he can now see the report that I've just made available. And what he can do if he wishes to subscribe to that is simply put a click here, and now, on a monthly basis, because we said it was a monthly report, he will get a PDF, because we chose that the format would be PDF, sent directly to his email inbox with the results of the report. And that's about the insight side of things, isn't it? That is about pushing the data out of the system. Now, we have other ways of making information available about this pushing out of data. And if you remember, I chose that my recalled titles analytics report was to be a scheduled report, but there were other options. I could have made it into something called a dashboard. I could also have had the end result being what we call a widget. And let's have a look at these widgets. So I'm going to Ewan's front screen. I did so by clicking on this little bit of the persistent menu bar at the top. This will always take you back to your home page, although normally in your own system you'd have your logo there, not ours. So I'll just get rid of that message, just talking about the updates that are going to happen over the weekend. Now, this whole area here is what we call the dashboard. And each of these boxes here is a widget. And so what Ewan is seeing with these widgets is actually the end result of a report that's been created in analytics. And so the owner of that report, the creator of that report, will have made a decision that the way in which they were going to make the report or the results of the report available was as a widget. Again, controlled by roles. So if we go to this button here which says Add Widget, what we can see here is it's a reasonable size list, but a list of widgets that Ewan has that Ewan has access to. And so these are all reports where the owner has said, I think the best way to push this data out is as a widget. And so he can select whichever one of these he wants on his personal dashboard. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is let's now leave Ewan behind and log back in with my username and password. And what you will now see, because you'll now be paying attention to the widgets, is that my dashboard is different. I have chosen different widgets to display. My login, my role in this imaginary library is as a systems administrator. So I want to have access to widgets for the whole system, not just for one area like Ewan did. And indeed, if we have a look at the Add Widget button, you'll see the list that I can choose from. I think I'll pull it up a little bit. Is actually much longer than Ewan. And again, that is linked to my role within the library. Okay. So we've looked at pushing the reports out to provide insight, pushing them out in a more traditional way. So Ewan is going to receive a PDF in his inbox every week. But we've also looked at this idea of widgets to push, to give that insight to individual members of staff about what's going on in areas that they're interested in. And the widgets are all displayed on a personal dashboard. Now, as we move into the final part of my presentation, where we're actually looking at the foresight, I'm going to still talk about dashboards, but in a slightly different way. So, my personal dashboard, only I can see this. It's logged to my username and password, but it's also possible to create dashboards as a way of grouping together widgets that are made available to a number of people. And usually these dashboards are going to be subject specific. And those people with permission, with the correct roles, can access these additional dashboards by clicking on this analytics option up at the top of the screen. And you can see a range of example dashboards that we have available. So these are non-personalized in that they are available to a range of people. They're not just linked to one person's login. And let's have a look at the e-resources dashboard. So these are all end results of reports, but grouped together. And in fact, I particularly want to draw your attention to the cost usage reports, because this is where we really start to talk about the foresight side of things. What Alma is able to do, as well as pulling on data that is entered into and held within Alma, it can also use data that is created outside of Alma, but can be imported into the system to actually do some quite exciting reporting. So the example here that will really give us foresight, will help us to plan, explore the future, are cost usage reports for our e-journals. So we've got cost information coming from the the acquisitions part of Alma, but we are combining that with usage figures that we are bringing in counter reports. And so we can see from this type of report which are the journals that, because of the cost compared to the usage, are the most expensive within our library, and the ones that are the most cost effective when you look at the actual price versus how much usage they're getting. And these examples may very well give us the sort of foresight to think about approaching faculty for a decision about cancelling anyway, making more, focusing more attention on the more expensive journals during introduction sessions to the library. The choice is yours, but what Alma is giving you are the tools to plan for the future and to use that information to make decisions. I'll just show you one other of these analytics dashboards, the subject-specific ones, again on this topic of foresight. And this is an acquisitions dashboard. And the one we're going to look at actually is the acquisitions method, because I think, again, this gives you some quite interesting information to perhaps make decisions about how you actually utilize staff within the library in the future. So what we're looking at here is a report that's looking at expenditure by acquisition method. Now, obviously, this is a demo database, and so the results are probably not exactly what you'd expect to see in a real proper library, in that the majority of our acquisitions in my imaginary library are carried out by creating an order within Alma and then sending it to a vendor, rather than going directly to the vendor system. And I think in a real library, those would absolutely be reversed. But if they were, and if you notice that I can also compare years to see what sort of change we have seen over the years in terms of how we are actually going through the acquisitions process. So it may very well be that by looking at a move from purchasing via Alma, which is probably more time-consuming, to actually placing orders in a vendor system and then having the using EDI, embedded order data information automatically brought into the system, may very well save me time, or save the staff time, so that we can repurpose them and get them doing something that's perhaps more directly impacting the users. So a very useful way of being able to look at tasks within the library, gain some sort of foresight of how things may go on in the future, and make decisions based on that information. And that, I think, is where I'm probably going to stop. I'm going to go back now into the slides. There's just a summary slide and so on, just to sort of reflect on what we've been looking at. So let's bring our slides back up. And move on. So, summary. Let me summarize what I hope I've been able to demonstrate during this session. I hope I've been able to demonstrate that Alma Analytics supports the full spectrum of reporting requirements for today's library that need to go from measurement of services all the way through to data-driven decision-making. I hope I've been able to demonstrate that this is delivered via a user-friendly interface, allowing you to very much design and deliver. Try that one again. To design and deliver results fit for purpose, using graphics and a powerful business intelligence tool, all of which is fully integrated into Alma. I hope I've been able to demonstrate that Alma provides powerful insight tools, such as the ability to push that data out of the system and group it together into dashboards for up-to-date insight. And finally, able to demonstrate that Alma provides you with trends and analysis for really true evidence-based librarianship. But you know, I think the final word in any presentation should always go to Dilbert, or in this case, my favorite character, Dogbert. I'll give you a minute to read it. And can I just guarantee the data in the Alma dashboard most certainly is accurate. All right. Well, thank you very much for your attention. We've got some time, I believe, for questions, which I think Daniela will have been monitoring. Although I will just crave your attention for a couple of moments more while I publicize the next webinar that we're doing, which is, just looking at my calendar, is on the 8th of September. So having a bit of a break for the sort of the holiday period. And then on the 8th of September, I will be presenting the rather intriguing name presentation, How Alma Allows Me to Be a Librarian Again. So do sign on to find out what that's all about.